Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Gen Politics. So, according to the New York Post, over 1 million illegal immigrants have chosen to self-deport, and they're making the claim that because of this, wages throughout the country have increased. So, I want to talk about those 2 points, the self-deportations, and then how this could possibly lead to rising wages throughout the country. So, first, the self-deportations, I see this as a really, really good thing. I see this as better than the physical ICE deportations. I think when people choose to leave of their own volition, I think it's easier on the system. There's not as much strain. When we're talking about probably the 40 million illegals who are here, going and physically rounding up that many people is going to be an immense task. It's near impossible in 4 years. And during that circumstances, you have an increased chance of accidents happening. You have an increased chance of violence. You have a lot more, paperwork, a lot more personnel you have to pay for. It can destabilize communities quickly. When you're talking about doing these massive raids, it's not organic, right? So if people are leaving of their own volition and over the course of a couple months they're moving out, businesses to have time to hire people, that's a little bit better of a transition period. So I can kind of understand that point too. So I think the self-deportations are good. I think not only for the countries it's good because we don't have to spend this giant burden to physically track down all these people and kick them out, and it's this long, tiresome process. And I think it's better for the illegal immigrants because if you're just like, hey, look, we're going to find you, you're going to have to go home. That's just the deal. That's what's going to happen. If you come to us and you say, hey, I want to go home, I think we should allow them to, sell off their assets, take that money with them, choose where they want to go, send them back there. I think that's the best way to do it. And so it's better for the illegal immigrants because the money they've made here, they get to take with them. They are getting sent back, a lot of them, to the third world. And so it would be nice. It's charitable as a country. We can do that. If you're talking strictly on paper, what these people are owed, they are owed nothing. They came to this country illegally. They've been leeching off the country. And so on paper, to say like we should allow them to take any assets would probably be technically wrong. I would say that is like wrong to allow them to do that. But at the end of the day, you got to make a deal. And there is some charitable work that can be done with this, right? You can say like, hey, we're going to give you a time frame. We're going to let you, settle everything that needs to be settled. We're going to allow you the money you've taken here, because I think the short-term loss of that money, I think is outweighed by the long-term gains of just getting our country back to normal. Hopefully those people who take the money, they can go and have a good life in their home country. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with like helping them start over where they belong. And so I'm much more liberal on that than I think some conservatives are. I think most people are kind of in the camp I'm in, where it's like, if they take their assets with them, who cares? Fundamentally, because that's not the issue. The issue is like, we just want them gone. And I want it gone in like a humane way as possible. When you're talking about displacing 40 million people, no matter how just it is, there is going to be problems, especially if that is, if one party is unwilling to do it. So it's a lot better for everybody with the self-deportation. So very much in support of that. I think that's good. I think we'll see those numbers rise as the ICE cracks down harder. It'll be easier for ICE to crack down when there's 1 million less people now, and then maybe in a couple months there'll be even 1 million less because they'll choose to self-deport. So then they can focus their resources on the criminals, the people who refuse to leave, the people who are actively a disturbance to the community. I think that's good. I think we can mostly agree on that. So how is this going to lead to rising wages, though? Well, it's kind of two-part, because one, the illegal immigrants a lot of times are getting paid under the table. So they're not even getting paid like minimum wage, or they're certainly getting paid less than the average, right? So nowadays, most places are going to pay you $10 to $15 if you're starting somewhere, just depending on your area. Most minimum wages is still at like $7 or $8. It's very hard to find American workers who are even willing to work for minimum wage anymore. There's the new kind of pseudo minimum wage, like I said, like kind of $10 to $15, and that's even hard to find people to work for. But The illegals, if you can pay them less than minimum wage, then like, that is lowering wages. That's bringing the whole system down. And then, so when you kind of remove those people, the businesses is now required to pay Americans a real wage. So the average wage is going up. And so even if the illegals are working for minimum wage legally, it's registered. Like, I mean, I'm not saying they're here legally in the sense. I'm saying that they're not getting paid under the table. It's like on some registry that you're paying an employee minimum wage. Their name is listed there in that legality form. Even if you're paying them minimum wage, most Americans are unable to sustain themselves on that or unwilling to work for that minimum, like the real legal minimum wage. And so kicking the illegals off, sending them home is going to raise that, pseudo minimum wage back up to $15 an hour for all the people there. And then on top of that, the second point is that you just have a smaller labor pool. So one, you can't devalue the wages just based on people who are willing to work less. But then two, you're also not able to devalue the wages because of the quantity of people. If you kick out 40 million people in a country of 330 million people, that's a sizable chunk. The wages rise because of that, because, the purchasing power, the vocal power of the employee is higher because they're small. There's less of them. So, they're slightly more scarce, right? They're 40 million people more scarce than they were a year ago or 4 years ago or however long it's going to take. So that leads to rising wages. Now, it's not that much initially. 1 million doesn't have a massive impact when spread across the entire country. But 40 million, that will certainly have the case. And then this is why people are also complaining about legal immigration, because it's the same thing. If you kick out all the legal immigrants, you just stop bringing in more, that's a discussion of like whether we want to kick out the ones we have. But even if you just said, we're not bringing in any more, we want to shrink the labor pool, that raises wages because you have a smaller pool to work from. If I can, choose between 100 candidates, well, there's probably some people in there who will work for $10. Maybe most of them want to work for 15, but I can probably find a couple, but maybe not enough to fill my whole hotel. But if I can choose between 1,000 people, well, then I can definitely find enough people to fill my hotel that'll work for $10. And so that kind of baseline lowers all the wages for everybody. And it also leaves a lot of people without jobs in the first place. And so that's already a huge problem. You have the illegal immigrants taking low skill jobs, the blue collar jobs. And then you have the legal immigrants from other countries taking the high skill jobs, the white collar jobs. So Americans are kind of getting eaten on both sides. And we heard this excuse like, Americans won't work for those wages, or they won't do those jobs. It's like, no, Americans will do the jobs. They just will do them for wages that matter, right? Like they always talk about picking strawberries. It's like, guys, picking strawberries sounds nice. It's not that bad a job. The problem is Americans won't work for $7 to do it. If you're paying them $15, if you're paying them $20, they would absolutely do it. Be outside picking strawberries sounds nice. There are jobs that are tough that people probably don't particularly want to do, like working in sewers and things like that. But, when you're not able to find illegals to drive down the wages who would work for a lower wage, you got to pay higher. That's just how the market works. You got to have people running the sewers. If you got to pay them $30 an hour or $40 to get down there to do it, someone will do it. You will find people to do it. And then if you raise the wages, you can actually pick from a bigger pool because you're paying more. So there's probably more people. You can find some skilled people. The Americans will do every job. You will find an American who is willing to do any job. That is the reality. Janitorial work. I've done janitorial work. It's, is it my first choice? No. But, I was doing it in college. Is it that bad? No. Like I did not have any problems doing it. So, and I know a lot of people who have too, especially like in college. Did they want to make a career out of it? Not particularly. But there's some people who don't have the skill set, don't have the experience or the drive, or they just want to live a normal life. They can afford what they need, who are willing to do those jobs for a long time, who do them well, who, want to have them, but they're unable to because they can't compete. As an American, you can't compete, being expected to live in a first class society, with the desires of a first world country, like to compete against people from the third world country who are willing to have 20 people in a house. And the argument of like, oh, well, Americans just won't work that hard. They just won't do that. It's like, well, we shouldn't have to. You shouldn't be lowering the bar of the quality of living, right? As a first world country, you shouldn't say you have to compete down. Like, you have to constantly be willing to lower your state of life in order to compete year over year. It's like getting worse and worse and worse. And then to say any American who's like, oh, I don't want to do that, I don't want to live in a multifamily home. I want, to be able to afford things. I want to be able to have even things like you would call like disposable income of like, yeah, I would like to pay for my children to do sports or to do music or to do anything. It's like, that's technically kind of disposable income, but those are experiences that most Americans would say are pretty valuable, and that there's kind of an expectation in a first world country that, children should be able to choose hobbies and do activities. Like, parents should be able to take a break from work. They should have some level of vacation. We shouldn't have to say, well, Americans have to work themselves to the bone to compete with people who come from the third world. It's just not fair. It's not how we run our society. And to say that they're lazy because they don't want to do that, it's like, they shouldn't have to. You shouldn't be expected to work that hard in America. Sorry, that's like the reality of the situation. You are born into a first world country. Is it fair? No. But if you are born in the class you're born into, you should basically have to work average hard to maintain that social status. Is that fair? No. But like, that's the reality. Like, if you're born in the low class, you should have to work average to be where your parents are. If you're born in the middle class, you should work average. That's what average means, is you stay where you are. You work average, right? I grew up in middle class, and so the expectation was, and most of the people I went to high school with, the expectation was everybody just goes to college. And so basically everybody went to college. And so that was kind of the average. Like, I knew people who went to the trades who didn't go, I knew some people who didn't go to college. I knew some people who went to the Ivy Leagues. And so those are on either end, but the vast, vast majority went to, standard D1, D2 colleges. Right. And so they worked average hard for their class, and that's where they were. And then I've known some people who, are very, very wealthy, or, so they kind of had connections. The expectation was they were going to go to an Ivy League. They did. That's kind of the nature of it. It's like, is that fair? No, not particularly. But in America, we're trying to make it seem like you have to work 10 times harder than your parents to be where your parents are, because we keep lowering the standards. And part of that is devaluing the wages, making us compete against not only each other, but the entire world. And so it's not fair to Americans. And then when they like shift the burden and say, it's like CEOs who are saying this, right? Like, oh, well, you won't work as hard as these people from the third world. You won't compete down. And it's like, because we shouldn't have to. We just shouldn't have to. Not in this country. That's not how this works. So I'm glad to see people self-deporting. I think this is a really good thing. Like I said, it's significantly more humane. And I think a lot of them are realizing it's just not worth the effort to stay. I think they see the walls are closing in. If it doesn't all happen under Trump, I think it'll happen eventually. You're seeing this growing tide of, like I say, even the legal like immigrants, people are starting to want to, totally end that, like a total immigration ban, basically. And so I think the legal immigrants see their time is kind of coming. So I'm all for making sure things are as hospitable as possible for them, relocate them in a very humane way. I think we can see that most people agree with that on the right. I can't think of anybody that comes to mind who's really like, oh, we got to seize their assets and, we'll just throw them over the wall. I don't know anybody who thinks that. I'm sure there are people. I think that's silly. I think that's not charitable. That's not humane. It's just not like, we're not at a point where we need to do that as a country. We really don't need to do that. We can afford a couple financial losses by letting them take their assets, and we can, afford this being a process that takes some time. Like I said, you give them a grace period, a month or two. Here's a month or two. We'll figure out where we're going to send you. Make your peace, and we'll help you get there. So that's my thoughts on this. I'm curious, do you agree? Do you think that the self-deportations are a good thing? Do you think they're going to increase? Do you agree with the points I said here about to kind of why I think the self-deportations are a good thing and why I think they're just going to happen anyways? Like, I would rather throw my lot in with the self-deportations than the ICE-enforced deportations, because even there, ICE is just something like when you're in that near occasion of accidents can happen, emotions run high. It's not a good situation for anybody, and I don't want anybody to be in that situation. They have to be if they're not making the choice to leave of their own volition, but it's not something that we want that situation. That's not our first choice, right? I don't think that's anybody's first choice, is to be actively just running in and arresting a whole town in the middle of the night. I don't think that's anyone's first choice. So let me know all that down in the comments below. If you made it all the way through the video, I appreciate it. If you like the content, like, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching.